So your name, sir?
Stephen Harris.
And where were you born?
Right here in Hartford, Connecticut. You know, it was funny because I was recruited by a person and they said, listen, man, we need some black men on the board. My first thought was, I don't know, library, I'm a lot of things, but library? Then I remembered, I was a kid, my mother taking me up on Barber Street to the branch library up there to get my very first library card. And one of the things that she always emphasized, she said, son, if you can read, there's nothing that you can't learn. But if you can't read, there's nothing you can learn. Some things just stick with you as you grow. She would take me to the library and I would go through books. And one of my things that I remember clearly is the first time I looked in National Geographic and I saw all these faces. And I just remember, man, it just sparked my interest because I'm looking at folks that look like me that were off in a distant country. And I saw folks that didn't look like me that were in another distant country. The library, I give a lot of credit for my curiosity because I saw things in those books that I had never seen before or imagined existed. I just see libraries as national treasures within neighborhoods. So to get back to how I got on the library, that thought came to mind. I said, you know what? Maybe I can do some good for the people in the 06120 in this city that look like me, to get them interested and utilizing the library as a resource to expand their horizons and to open their minds and shine that light in that darkness. 06120 is the poorest zip code in the state of Connecticut. And I don't say that with any shame because we have good people that live in the 06120. It's a section of the city that never recovered from the riots in the 60s. I graduated from Weaver in 66. And I went in the service. I enlisted. My mother said, you are not going to hang around here doing nothing. And that following year, I was in Vietnam. It was traumatic. Imagine being 19 years old. You graduated from high school. You was one of the big wigs at Weaver, one of the homies that kind of had the run of the school with the rest of the crew. Came back home, told my mom, I said, look, I'm not going to survive this draft thing, so I'm going to enlist and maybe I can get a better deal. And as I said, I enlisted 1966, 19 years old. First time really away from home. And within a year's time, and I was in the jungles of Vietnam in the infantry. My earliest memories was getting on that plane. We made a stop in Alaska, Japan, and the last stop we made was in Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. And I just remember looking out the window and seeing these Vietnamese women along the runway with these straw brooms just sweeping the runway. And I'm like, this ain't home. And I remember when they opened that door, it instantly got hot as an oven inside that plane. And we got off that plane, and the rest was just trauma from that day forward. Like I said, I was in the infantry. I just turned 20 now. War shows you the worst of mankind. One thing about the military is I don't care where you're at, where you're stationed. We get the news, especially bad news. And I just remember we went on a combat assault, jumped out of those choppers in what we call a hot LZ under fire. We had to take a hill. And I just remember we fought up that hill, chased the NVA off the hill, and every night you dug a bunker. That's how you lived. You lived in the ground. And I was digging a bunker, and a guy came and jumped in my doggone hole, and he said, Tramp. He said, man, they killed Dr. King. They killed Dr. King. I said, what are you talking about? Then he killed Dr. King in Tennessee. We heard it over Armed Services radio. Everybody had a transistor radio, and this brother heard it, and he's going around to each of our holes. He said, man, they killed Dr. King. And like I said, we had just got through landing in this hot LZ. So I said, I thought about it. And I said, no, man, we got to dig in. Had no idea what was going on in Hartford. That's one thing my mother and grandmother and family did. They shielded me from a lot of bad news. My grandfather, who was like my surrogate father, passed away. They didn't tell me till they picked me up at the airport. We was coming home. And they said, a couple of things have happened. Your grandfather passed away while you were gone, and the city's burned down. Like, what do you mean the city's burned down? And we're coming down 91 now. We get off at the North Main Street exit. I'm looking ahead, and I see 3 figures standing at the exit. The 3 state police wouldn't let you get off on the North Main Street exit because folks were still running back and forth across Main Street. We had to go downtown, got off at the State Street exit, go up to Main Street, take a right, come back down Main Street going north. Well, the first thing I noticed was there was nobody downtown. It was like a ghost town. Then when we get down to Main, Albany Avenue, Church and Ann Street, there was a barricade across all of that. We were in a line with other cars, and behind the barricade were Hartford Police, State Police, and National Guard. And I could smell the tear gas in the air. I could see smoke. And I remember they waved us up to the barricade and they asked my uncle who was driving, where you going? He said, we're going home. He said, well, where do you live? He said, Cleveland Avenue. He said, show me your driver's license. Then another officer looked in the back seat where I was, and I got on this uniform, and he says, you're in the service? I said, yeah. He said, just got back from now. He says, okay. He told us, go, let him go through. Let him go. And he said to me, I'll never forget this. He said, be careful. Now, this is a man telling me to be careful in a neighborhood I knew every inch of that I grew up in. And I just found that to be awkward. As we went down Main Street, I'm looking left and right, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Burned buildings, looted properties, businesses. And I said to my mother, I said, I just left this 24 hours ago. And I thought I was coming home to sanctuary. And North Hartford hasn't recovered from that yet. Well, the library got burned down, first of all, the one I got my card from. Anytime you lose documents, particularly historical documents, you don't get those back. It's funny because when I got in the fire service, when I started teaching fire education to citizens, one of the first things I would tell people is, listen, go out, get you a fireproof box, get your Social Security card, your insurance policy, anything valuable, put them in that fireproof box, because God forbid you should have a fire. One thing about fire, it burns up everything. Those important documents that you're going to need to restart your life. You got to protect those documents because you don't know how hard it is to get another Social Security card or another whatever. This fire stuff is serious business. And it's funny because I used to walk past a firehouse just about every day. Never gave it any thought to being a firefighter. Finally got out the service. I went to Pratt & Whitney for a hot minute. And I said, I can't do this. So I was going to go back and re-enlist. And I said, you know what? I made it through. And I got to take care of my babies. And I just remember walking up Barber Street to the bus station because I didn't have a car. Go catch the bus, and a fellow by the name of John Abrams saw me. He was on the fire department. He said, hey, Steve, man, you out? I said, yeah, what's going on? We talking. I said, man, I can't do Pratt, man. I'm going back in the service, man. He said, why? I said, because I got to make a living. I got to take care of my babies, my wife. He said, no, man, you ain't got to do that. Come join the fire department. This was my exact words. I said, there is no way in hell I'm going to run into a burning building. He said, but you survived the jungle, right? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you can survive this too. He took me into his living room for about an hour and told me about the fire department, what it consisted of. And when I left there, instead of going downtown and re-enlisting, I went down to City Hall and got an application for the fire department because of this brother took the time to explain the benefit that would be for me and my family. Fire service and firefighting was the best job I ever had. I was 22 when I started. Did 27 years. I've always been adventurous. And once I got on the job, I said, I can do this. But I was very fortunate to meet brothers who were the first to come on the job, that took me under their wing. I think libraries, churches are key components in any neighborhood. And I tell people, I said, I'm honored to be associated with a library that recognizes that we have a food desert, that we have people who are hungry, that does a food giveaway once a month. I mean, libraries aren't really designed to be food pantries, but they saw the need. And I said, that's what makes library, especially our library, so unique. They understand the struggles that people are going through. And when people are struggling, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're struggling. I used to sometimes wonder why parents would take their kids to appointments. And then someone said to me, Steve, we got a very low literacy rate in this city. So when you see parents dragging their kids to appointments, and sometimes it's for them to read what it is that they need to sign and stuff. And that just struck me. You have young people now graduating from high school with, 5th grade reading levels? How are you going to compete out here with that? My last few years on the fire service, man, I was a recruiter. And I can remember I would sit down at Hal's, in my favorite place, every day. Every place I went, I had applications. See young men and women, come here. You ever think about being a firefighter? Fill out this application. Bring it back to me. I'm here every day. Get the application back. I look at it, misspell words. And you don't have to spell a whole lot. One of the things I would tell them, if you're going to be a firefighter, the number one thing you have to be able to do is follow instruction. Because we do life and death stuff. You have to be able to follow instruction. I gave you an application. What's the first thing on an application that they ask you to do? Put your name. They say last name, first name, middle initial. So if I've got 1,000 filled out applications and I know there's only 10 jobs, I look at that name. If you've got your first name, last name, and it's asking for your last name, first name. Guess where your application goes? I love being on the line. I love running into those buildings. I love putting out those fires. But after a while, I started thinking, every fire we put out, it displaces the people that lived here. I want to be someplace where I can help people learn not to get burned out of your homes. And that's why I said, you know what? I'm going to work on getting into the Special Services Division and teach fire education and fire survival. Sometimes our pride is such that we're scared to try because we've never done it before. Well, I never did firefighting before, but I did pretty good at it when I did do it because I paid attention. And don't ever be scared to ask a question. I'm big on the library because the library does a lot more than just give us books. They feed us in some instances. It's very troubling to me that in many instances, they have to scrounge to get dollars to continue to be able to provide these services. They're institutions. When you want knowledge, go to the library. It's there. It is there. And I think the staff is more than willing to help you in any endeavor that we can. My last parting words is particularly to young people, don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. There's somebody out here who will help you. We just need to know that you need help.
Thank you for listening to 250 Stories, a production of HPL Studios at Hartford Public Library. This episode was written, produced, and recorded by Christopher T. Brown, audio edited, mixed, and mastered by Sam Sigmund, edited by Faith Lucas, and with photography and graphic design support from Hartford Public Library's communications team and the Hartford History Center. For more information on this project, visit www.hplstudios.hplct.org. New episodes release every Tuesday, so subscribe to stay tuned.